All right, so let us start the class. I hope my slides are visible to you and my voice is also audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us talk about the design methodologies today in this lecture. Okay, so that is the design techniques or methods which are available by which one can design the digital ICs in a more economical way. That is, you don't want to spend more time also, and then the cost of the design should also be low, right? So for that, one has to follow some design methodology. So design methodology again is a function of you know the complexity that a chip is presenting. So whatever function you are implementing, so if that function is, depending on the complexity of that function, you will choose a particular design methodology. Okay. So let me again bring you back to the same old slide which we had seen some time back. That is, which explains the the productivity gap, right? That is this gap. This is called productivity gap between the complexity growth rate and productivity growth rate. So there is a gap. So this gap is continuously growing up, right? So on the y-axis you have logic transistors per chip, right? And on the x-axis here, this is time, and on the other y-axis you have productivity, which is measured in terms of transistors per staff month. That is how many staff members you require to implement or to make a chip or to make a design, right? So we see that with time, obviously the complexity is increasing. Maybe I'll select a pointer over here. Yeah, so we see that with time, the the complexity, that is chip complexity, so this is growing with time, right? And you will also find that the productivity growth rate, so this we had talked about earlier, because of the lack of manpower, the skilled manpower, one cannot match at this pace, that is at complexity growth rate. So design productivity is small because of the lack of skilled manpower. So that is why we see here a gap, and this is called productivity gap or design productivity gap. Now this gap can be reduced if the manpower, skilled manpower, so that is increased. So if this can go up, this gap can come down, right? But yes, one cannot say that some company is making a microprocessor and it has, let's say, 1,000 employees. So those all 1,000 employees should not be engaged in just implementing a single circuit, right? Though obviously this microprocessor design teams, the number of people may go up somewhere around 500, obviously. But yes, one cannot expect that all design team or design members should be involved only in designing just one circuit, right? So that is actually a huge problem here. That is the skilled manpower. So that does not grow up at the same rate as the complexity grows. So that is why we see a gap over here. Now to overcome this gap, as we said that either one has to improve or increase the skilled manpower, or one has to find out ways by which the chip can be designed in a shorter time. Okay? So that the labor cost can also be brought down and time to market can also be achieved. Right? So labor cost obviously depend upon the number of people who are working to design a chip, right? Now if you look at a simple microprocessor, so that involves maybe four important components are there. So first is, let's say, input output support you need to have in any chip, not just a microprocessor. Then you also have a memory to store the data and instructions in a microprocessor. Then you have a data path where all computations will be performed. Then you have a control unit which will control all the events in the microprocessor, right? Then this structure can be repeated many times on maybe a single system on chip. So since a system on chip or any chip can have more than one microprocessor, so obviously this block can be repeated several times depending upon the number of microprocessors are required to implement a system. Now if we talk about data path, so data path is a place where all computations are performed, and it consists of an interconnection of basic combinational functions such as and or gates or arithmetic operators, for example addition, multiplication, etc. So all these are the part of data path. Then the control module, right? That is this one, control here, this one. So this control module, it determines what actions happen in the processor at any given time. So what happens are happening in the microprocessor. So that those are all those events are controlled by the control logic or control module. Now here is an example of a system on chip, right? So system on chip means a complete system on chip. So for example here a complete high definition digital TV chip, right? So a complete high definition digital TV set chip is shown over here. In fact, you know the blocks are only shown of this high definition digital TV set. So you will find that it involves, I mean, the same chip has SRAM also, main memory also, then it has two processors also, right? Same chip has processor also, memory also, okay? Then control unit also is in the same processor, same chip, right? And also the IO ports, audio out, for example, video out, right? Audio in. So all these components or all these blocks which we had seen here, so all are there present on single chip. So that is called system on chip, right? So obviously making a system on chip is again a very complex business, because making a memory or maybe a data path itself is a very complex business. Now somebody wants to make a system on chip, which complete system on chip, which involves all these components. And apart from this, if we talk about the cell phones, they have transmitters and receivers also, okay, apart from microprocessors, RAMs, control units. Yeah, so it's a very complex business. So obviously one needs some design methodology. Obviously we have CAD tools today available, and because of the CAD tools, the design complexity can be reduced to some extent. The design time can be brought down. Labor cost can also be brought down. Okay. So the impact of, in fact, the implementation choices, that is what design methodology you will be utilizing to implement a chip. So that depends upon the chip functionality. How complex is the chip? Now, based on the chip functionality, one can choose either hardwired or custom design methodology, or configurable or parameterizable design methodology, or maybe a domain specific or application specific methodology, okay? Or maybe a mixture of all these three, right? So that may be called an embedded design methodology, or embedded microprocessor can be produced. So what is hardwired or custom? So hardwired or custom design methodology means here that uh, the connections in the design are fixed. That is, chip is already optimized, and there are no possibilities of further optimization or further design changes or function changes. So that is hardwired or custom. Okay. Similarly, configurable or parameterizable is, that is, one can configure or one can reprogram depending on the requirement, right? So you can change the functionality in configurable or parameterizable or reconfigurable kind of design methodology. Now the advantage of this hardwired or custom would be, that is, the cost and the time. So that can be brought down if you follow this design methodology, right? However, in parameterizable or configurable, so obviously that means that this is more flexible, since you can, it permits late binding or late design changes are permissible in configurable or parameterizable approach. So it is more flexible. Now this flexibility, so this comes at some cost, right? So that cost is, that is extra cost to get this flexibility, is that more components will be present now on the chip, right? So for example, today we have fans which are operated via remotes. Earlier we had fans which did not had remotes, right? So today we have fans coming with which have remotes. So obviously to make a communication of fan with the remote, you need some extra chip inside the fan. So that chip will also consume some power, right? So obviously the energy consumed is more in flexible designs because of more components being involved to implement that flexibility, right? So that is actually the cost in building a flexible system or programmable system. Okay. Now that cost is also the performance or energy efficiency. Since now you have more components in a flexible design, so more components will obviously involve more energy. So they will take more energy. More components will consume more energy. So here on y-axis you will see energy efficiency, right? So that is number of operations per milliwatt of energy consumption, right? That is how many operations you can perform in particular energy, that is some milliwatts or maybe millijoules, right? So that is called energy efficiency. So hardwire or custom, the energy efficiency is high, okay? 100 to 1000 millions operations per millijoules can be performed. Similarly in flexible approach, since the number of components are more, energy efficiency is also small. That is somewhere around 10 to 100 millions of operations per millijoules can be performed here. Right. Now let us talk about this very popular, and I think you might be familiar about this chart, which is called Y chart. Right. So you might have also read this in the other course, Verilog, Y chart. Okay. So in this Y chart, you have three axes obviously here. So these three axes are actually they present the abstraction levels. So for example, here you have behavioral representation, one axis, the other axis represents structural representation, and the third one is geometric representation, right? And then you have abstraction levels in each representation. So for example, the lowest level of abstraction in the behavior representation is Boolean equations. Okay? Then other abstraction level is module description, FSM, then programs or algorithms, right? So these are the abstraction levels in behavioral representation. So similarly, in the geometric representation, the abstraction levels, the lowest level could be mask. Then from mask, one can think of making module or floor branch. And from the floor plans, one can think of making processor floor plans, or maybe system floor plans, right? So this basically represents the layout part or physical design part, geometric representation. Then on the other axis, you see structural representation. So again, you have the levels of abstraction present in the structural representation. So for example, the lowest level could be either devices or maybe gates. Okay, then from devices or gates, one can create cells, and then from those cells, one can make more complex logics. For example, ALU registers or maybe even processors. Okay. Now the complete IC design process, right? So the complete IC design process that actually traverses iteratively between these three axes of the Y chart. Yeah, so this has to be digested, right? So this important point has to be noted and digested, that the complete IC design process that we have studied so far, from the SPICE simulation or from the Verilog coding or HDL coding, and then coming on to the layout, and then extracting the parasitics from the layout, and then again performing SPICE simulation based on those parasitics, right? So that actually is a part, and that all these three parts are of the IC design process, and the IC design process that traverses iteratively between these three axes of the Y chart, right? So how, maybe I'll go back somewhere here. Yeah, here. So as I said, that the semi-custom design flow or maybe the IC design process, so that traverses iteratively between the axes of the Y chart, right? That is three axes we had seen: behavioral, structural, and physical, right? So what we do is, based on the specifications or behavior, we try to capture the design, okay, So we write the HDL code and then we perform logic synthesis, right, from the HDL code. So that is actually the structural part. Behavioral part is given by the user specification. User gives us the behavior, and this behavior we have to implement and create a chip for this behavior, right? So for this behavior, you write a HDL code and then perform the logic synthesis. That is, this HDL code is now converted into a netlist which consists of gates, and gates are obviously gates consist of transistors, right? So from HDL you perform logic synthesis, and then from this RTL code you do this pre-layout simulation. Without drawing the layout, you do this SPICE simulation, or the simulation using that model sim. You have done some simulation for seeing the timing violations. So you do that pre-layout simulation, okay? And then if there are any timing violations in the pre-layout simulation, then you go and check back again your HDL code. And if there are timing violations in the pre-layout simulation, then you have to correct the HDL code and then again perform the logic synthesis. Then again go back to this pre-layout simulation, that is, see the timing violations. And if there are timing violations, again you have to fix the HDL code. And if in this process, I mean, this is again an iterative process, right? The process is moving in this structural loop itself, right? So once the logic synthesis is okay, I mean, that is, the pre-layout simulations are okay, then that means this HDL code is okay. That is, this RTL synthesis is also okay. Now you move on to the other axis of the Y chart, right? That is, based on the RTL synthesis, now you decide the floor planning. Okay, that is, you try to draw the layout here. So before drawing the layout, you know how many components are there. So you floor plan, that is, you decide that which area of the chip will have which component, right? So that is, which component will be, or which module will be placed on which portion of the chip. So for example, transmitters and receivers modules, so they should not be placed near the power supply. Let us say this is my power supply here. Okay, so transmitters and receivers should not be placed close to the power supply. So maybe I'll think of placing this transmitter or receiver maybe here, yeah, far away from the power supply. So that decision has to be taken while doing this floor planning, right? Then after floor planning, you come on to this placement, that is, placement of cells within the modules, right? So these are the modules here. So these modules also have cells, that is, gates. So the placement of gates or cells within these modules, so that decision has to be taken in this placement section, right? Then after placing everything, right, inside the module also you have to do routing. That is, in this module also one has to do routing or connecting the cells inside the module. And then finally, when you have placed all these modules on the chip, then you have to make connections between these modules also, right? So that is a part which is done during routing, right? So routing is making connections between the modules, cells within the modules, and between the modules, right? Now if routing is performed, then after routing you have the complete layout, right? So that is, I have the complete layout of my chip now here. Then for this layout, I'll go for circuit extraction, that is, parasitic extraction I'll do. And then after extracting the parasitic, I'll again perform a simulation, what we call as post layout simulation, that is, including these parasitics which we had extracted. So we again perform the simulation, SPICE simulation. And if anything is not correct, that is, if there are some timing violations here, then again one has to check the floor planning and placement. Okay. And then one has to again do the routing, and then again has to extract the parasitics. Again one has to do the post layout simulation. Okay. And if there are again violations, again do floor planning. Otherwise, one can send, if everything is okay, there are no timing violations, then the final layout that can be sent to the tape out, that is, that can be sent to the foundry for fabrication. So tape out here means fabrication. Okay. So if there are no timing violation, one has to send it to the foundry for fabrication, right? So that is why, that is how this Y chart is important. As I said, that the entire IC design flow or entire IC design process, so that traverses iteratively within this loop, within the traverses iteratively between the three axes of the Y chart, right? So this is an iterative loop, right? And entire process is iterative. Now it may take days to finish the iterations, or maybe even weeks to finish these iterations. So that is why this process is complex, right? That is, it may take even weeks to finish, even let's say days to finish these iterations, okay, or maybe weeks to finish these iterations. Let me go back to the same place. Yeah, here. Okay. So we have a few implementation choices available with us to implement any digital circuit. Okay. And these approaches can be again subdivided into two approaches. That is, one is custom approach and the other is semi-custom approach, right? So custom here means that everything can be handcrafted, right? So without using any IPs or any design cells which are already written by some designers. So one has to design everything from scratch. So that is called custom approach, okay? Or custom or handcrafted. Okay? And this custom approach is important when performance of the design, I mean chip performance is important, or design density is important. So one cannot rely on using standard IPs or standard cells. So if performance is very important and also area is also important, so one has to obviously optimize the circuit on its own, right? That is handcrafting, or designer has to redesign things on his own from scratch if performance is important, or if the area is also important, right? Now the problem with this custom approach is, since it has to be done by some designer from the scratch, everything has to be handcrafted, so the cost is very high. That is, cost of implementation is very high, and also the time to implement that chip, so that will also be very large, right? So that is the disadvantage. But yes, the advantage is that high performance can be achieved, and also high density integrated circuit can be produced. In fact, this custom approach, this is today only used for designing libraries only, right? So for designing libraries of cells, this custom approach is still being used today, right? Now for designing the complex chips, maybe microprocessors, right? So one cannot rely on this custom technique. One cannot make a microprocessor, a high-end microprocessor, using this custom technique, right? Because one cannot think of making everything from scratch. So one has to rely on some CAD tools by using this approach, which is called semi-custom. Okay. So in semi-custom, one can think of using already designed IPs, okay, or cells. Already designed IPs or cells can be used to implement a IC or a chip or a microprocessor, right? So this actually saves a lot of time, okay? And also it is it saves labor cost also, right? Time also and labor cost also. So that can be saved if one uses semi-custom. So semi-custom, as I said, it uses some pre-designed IPs or pre-designed cells, okay? And also one can think of optimizing these cells as required, right? So if somebody requires to optimize some critical path, there is some critical path which has to be optimized if in some microprocessor, then that can also be optimized again by some designer. So that is why it is called semi-custom. That is using IPs also, standard cells or IPs also, and by designing on the by the designer itself, right? That is handcrafting also, and plus using the standard cells or standard IPs also. Now this semi-custom approach is again divided into two approaches. That is, one is cell-based and the other is array-based. Cell-based is divided into two approaches: standard cells or compiled cells and macro cells. And array-based is again divided into two. That is, one is pre-diffuse or gate arrays, and the other one is pre-wired or FPGAs, right? So let us talk about all these in little bit detail. So before that, let us see that by custom approach, sometime back we had seen that in Intel 4004, all the components were handcrafted, all transistors were handcrafted. So since it had only, I think, 1000 transistors, so it was possible to make a microprocessor using custom approach. But now the high-end microprocessors, for example, the Intel series, okay, so they cannot be made by using the custom approaches or handcrafting. So they require some design automation because transistor count is more. So in the semi-custom approach here, so let us talk about this cell-based, right? So what is cell-based? Now cell-based or standard cell-based design methodologies. So here what we have is, we have rows of logic cells, right? So this is rows of logic cells, right? This is one row, this is two row, this is third row, and this is fourth row, right? So we have rows of logic cells, and you will notice here that the height of the each logic cell row is same, right? So all these heights are same of all these rows of logic cells. Okay? So we have rows of logic cells, and the height of each logic cell is same. Width may be different, right? So width is different here, width is different. Okay? Now, in between these rows of logic cells, the white areas, that is this area or maybe this area here, this area or this area, right? So this area is called routing channel. Okay? That is, you will use this area to connect the cells, right? For example, here a connection is shown. Okay? Similarly, one can connect this logic cell to this using this routing area, right? Now within the rows, you will also find some empty space here. So this is called feed through cell, right? So for example, one has to connect this logic cell, this one, to this one here. So one can directly connect through this feed through cell. So the interconnect length or interconnect wire length will be small. Otherwise, one has to bring this line from here and then connect it this way, right? So that way the interconnect length is large. Now, in the standard cell-based approach, the layout is automatically generated using the cells in the library, right? So since all these cells, so these are actually taken from some library, so layout is also automatically generated. In fact, we have some tools in the lab where you will see that layout can be generated at, you just click one button and the layout will be generated automatically for you, right? So semi-custom layout can be generated. So that doesn't mean that you have learned how to draw the layout, so that is not actually a waste, right? Because one has to optimize the layout, one is concerned about the performance, and obviously one has to use custom approach or custom layout, right? So that in that scenario, knowing how to design the layout is also important. Okay. All right. Now this is the actual scenario or actual chip using the standard cell. So here you will see that these are the rows here. Okay. All these are rows, and in between the rows, the white area which you see, so that is routing channel, and the connections is also done over here, right? So here you will also notice that the wiring channel, that is white area, so that represents substantial amount of the chip area, right? So most of the chip area is consumed by this white area. So the design will be more efficient if one can reduce this white area, right? So to reduce this white area, one has to use more metal layers. So since this standard cell approach uses only 3-layer metal process, so if you want to minimize this white area, that is the area which is reserved for routing channel, so that can be minimized if I have more layer metal process, right? So in fact, in new generation layouts or new generation process technology, you will see that a standard cell that may look like this, where you will find that the white area, that is routing channel area, so that white area is very minimal here, right? That is, in fact, this chip has 90% density, which means that virtually all of the chip area is covered by logic cells, right? So this is possible by having more metal layers. So for example, here, they are using 7 metal layer process. So 7 metal layer process means more crossing is permitted. So more the area can be utilized, more area, chip area can be utilized. And here you will notice that the cell structure, that is these horizontal cells, right? These cells. So these are hidden beyond the layout itself, right? So you are not able to track the cells which were, or the row of cells, right? So row of cells which may be present somewhere here. So these are hidden beneath the interconnect wires, because interconnect wires are so dense here, right? These are not interconnect. These are not those rows of cells. These may be memories. Right? So memories are very structured. So I think that these vertical lines, that is purple lines, could be memories. But yes, the cell structure, that is the rows of cells, so those are hidden beneath the interconnect layers. Now, a very small example of standard cell is presented here. So any designer can make a standard cell. For example, here this is a standard cell of 3-input NAND gate, right? Now, this standard cell, obviously, most of the information is abstracted. Only some information is provided to the user, which is actually has to be known. For example, inputs and outputs, and maybe the delays. So, for example, here this is a 3-input NAND cell. So the TP-LH and TP-HL data is presented. Okay, that is not abstracted, so that has been shown over here. And C and T over here. So C here means load capacitance, and T means input rise or fall time. Right? So T means rise or fall time, and C here means the load capacitance. Okay. So that way one can think of, and in fact, this is also the layout of this 3-input NAND gate. So this is a standard cell. So while designing, or when you are trying to create a automatic layout for any bigger circuits, then this standard cell may be utilized. Okay. You don't have to use it. The tool will automatically select, or software will automatically select this standard cell which is already present as a library for generating the automatic layout. But yes, these standard cells also obviously has to be implemented by someone, some designer. Okay. So that means these standard cells has to be produced by a custom process or handcrafted process. So one has to again start with transistors, that is PMOS and NMOS, and then one has to provide connections between the source and drains, and then maybe power supplies and grounds can also be attached. Okay, and then more contacts can also be provided for finishing the final finish cell. Right, so that way one can design any cell, right, or IP or library of any cell can be designed. Now let us talk about this programmable logic array, PLA, right? So using this PLA also one can minimize the design time and design effort, right? So this programmable logic array actually contains array of AND gates and an array of OR gates, right? Now connections between this AND and OR gates can be done by the user by writing a program, right? By fusing the wires of AND and OR gates, a connection or functionality can be produced. So for example, here, sum of product form, the output can be present in, or a function or logic function can be created in sum of product forms using AND OR gates, right? So AND OR gates obviously means sum of product format function output can be produced. For example, this output can be produced, or maybe this output can also be produced using this PLA. Then layout of PLA can also be thought of. So for example, you have an AND plane and an OR plane. So that way one can draw the layout also of this PLA. Now let us also talk about this macro modules. What are these macro modules? In fact, these macro modules or macro cells. So these are further subdivided into two categories, that is hard macros or soft macros. Okay. So this is a 8 KB SRAM, which is generated by a hard macro module generator. So here hard macro cell means that module has given functionality and it has predetermined physical design. Right? So hard macro means that module has a predetermined functionality and a predetermined physical design. So you cannot change or optimize the functionality, and also you cannot change or optimize the layout or the physical physical design of the hard macro. So if a hard macro has been given to you, which is of this shape, so it will always remain of this shape, right? And you cannot also not optimize this, or you cannot also modify. If it is a 8 KB RAM, so it will remain a 8 KB RAM. You cannot make or modify this, right? So that is actually a hard macro, right? So advantages of this hard macro are that dense layouts are possible, and these hard macros are already optimized and for some predictable performance and power dissipation. So for some predictable performance and power estimation, these hard macros are already optimized. So this is one of the advantages of this hard macro. Disadvantage is that it is hard to port the design to other technologies, because this hard macro might be fabricated using some process technology. If you want to port the same hard macro to some other process technology, so it is very hard, right? Now, apart from hard macro, the other macro is called soft macro, right? So here, soft macro, obviously there is some given functionality, okay, but without specific physical design. That is, physical design can be changed. Functionality cannot be changed, but physical design can be changed, right? That is, depending upon the chip layout or chip area, you can decide the shape of your macro, right? So any shape can be possible, right? So depending upon your chip area and how you want to what shape and size you want, so that you can fix in this soft macro, right? So that means relative location of transistors and wiring within the module, so that can be changed, okay? Depending upon your need, you can change the location of transistors and also the wiring. So that is how various shapes of the soft macros are possible. So for example, here you will see that these are the soft macros of the same function, right? And the shape of this is this and this, both are different, right? So that is actually the advantage of this soft macro, that is various shapes can be produced, that is the chips with various shapes and designs can be produced. Now, this macro module, so that can also be acquired from third-party vendors as an intellectual property, right? So some third-party vendor may produce, maybe, for example, let's say a protocol processor for wireless can be designed, and that design can be sold as an intellectual property by that company to some other companies, and those companies can utilize this protocol processor wireless to implement other functionalities or other systems, right? So these macro modules, so they can be acquired from third-party vendors through license agreements or paying the royalty, and these are called intellectual properties. And this we had seen. Now let us talk about this design closure problem. Okay. So since we understood that the entire IC design process, so that iterates in this loop, right? And it can take days or even maybe weeks to finish these iterations, right? Now, if somebody tries to, let's say, remove the timing violations, so obviously one has to, go by iterations. So let us say in the first iteration, I have these many timing violations. Yeah, so these white spots, so they represent timing violations. Okay. And in the second set of iteration, the timing violations are somewhat removed. So you will see that in this picture, white spots have been reduced. That is, white spots represents timing violations here. So in the second iterations, maybe the timing violation is somewhat reduced, and maybe in the third iteration, or I don't know which iteration it is, maybe third or maybe fourth or maybe fifth. So I see that there are no timing violations here now, right? So now this process, that is starting from here where we had so many timing violations, and now arriving at this point where we have no timing violation. So this may take weeks, okay, or maybe even months it can take. So it's a very time taking process, and also because of this, the company may lose the time to market thing, right? That is, some other company can produce the same chip within a shorter time, and the company may lose business because of this problem. That is called design closure problem. Right? Now, how to overcome this problem? Right? So to overcome this problem, it has been suggested to provide the it has been said that if the RTL synthesis, right? So if RTL synthesis can also handle the first order routing and placement, right? So that is during the synthesis, you write your HDL code and then you perform the logic synthesis. So during that logic synthesis step, if the routing and placement, so that can also be handled during the logic synthesis. Okay? Then a netlist with place and route information can be generated during that step itself. That is during the RTL synthesis itself. If place and route thing can also be handled. Okay? Then a netlist with place and route information. I mean, it would be a first order netlist, not complete, not a netlist with complete place and route information. It would be a first order netlist with place and route information. Now, this first order place and route information based netlist can be fed to some optimization tool, which will, finalize the final place and route information, right? That is, which will generate a layout with final place and route information, right? So then the design closure problem, that is this problem, so this can be reduced to some extent. In fact, in many tools or many softwares, you will find that this methodology is already existing, and it has proved that this design closure problem can be reduced to some extent by this technique. That is, if you can intermix the placement and route information with the logic synthesis. When we talk about array-based approach, so we have two approaches here in array-based approach, that is pre-diffused or gate arrays or sea of gates, or pre-wired, or what we call FPGAs. Right? So two approaches are here. So FPGAs, I think you might be knowing in your Verilog course also, you might have tried to write the code for a particular FPGA. Okay. Though yes, of course, you might not have burned the code on FPGA, which you will do when the institute opens in the lab. Okay. So let us talk about the pre-diffused or sea of gate array technique. Right. So in a gate array or sea of gates, so again you have rows or rows of gates. Okay. So this is an array of gates, right? So this row represents a gate array or array of gates. So this row also represents an array or array of gate. Okay. And in between again these rows you have these white spaces which are for routing channel, right? Which are used as routing channel. Okay. Now here uncommitted cell is being presented, that is a cell which has no connections, right? So this does not represent any logic, only transistors are present here. So this is an uncommitted cell, and this is a committed cell. So here connections are provided. So it is a 4-input NOR gate connection. So this represents a 4-input NOR gate, right? So which can be connected. I mean, these connections can be done over here, okay, in the gate array or sea of gate design, right? So this kind of connection can be done to produce a 4-input NOR, or maybe any other circuit or any other complex logic can be produced. Now, in the same gate array, one can think of using oxide isolation between the gates, right? So one wants to isolate the two gates, so one can use oxide isolation, for example, here between these gates, right? So this PMOS and NMOS can make a gate, and now this, and maybe this PMOS and this NMOS can also make a gate. So to isolate these two gates, one can use oxide isolation between the transistor diffusion regions. Right? So similarly, one can also use another isolation which is called gate isolation. Okay? So again, you see here a PMOS transistor sharing the same diffusion region, and NMOS transistors also sharing the same diffusion region. Now, if I want to isolate, let us say this transistor with this transistor. Okay? So what I will do is, since this is an NMOS, so I'll connect the gate of this NMOS to 0 or ground. Okay? So that means I have isolated my this transistor and this transistor. Similarly, PMOS, the isolation can be done. So these two transistors can be isolated by connecting this one, that is gate, to VDD, right? So this is how gate isolation can be done in C of gate or gate array technique. Now dog bone terminations, which you see here, right? So these poly lines, so these are terminated in a special way. So these are called dog bone terminations, and this provides actually denser routing. It has been shown that seen that if you have this dog bone termination, then denser routing can be achieved. Now, while designing the C of gates, okay, so one has to also think of having a separate area for having memory. Okay. So somebody is suppose trying to utilize this C of gate approach to implement some chip or some function. Then obviously, depending upon the complexity of that function, the memory complexity or memory requirement is also more. Yeah, more complex is the function, more large will be the memory. So it is good approach to set an extra separate area on the chip for only making memory. So for example, here this portion is kept reserved for making memory, right? And then obviously random logic can come over here in this area. So this is actually a good approach. Now let us come on to the FPGA approach or pre-wired array approach, right? So this is based on three types of programming technique. One is called fuse-based programming, or what we call as program once. Then the other one is called non-volatile or EEPROM based. So here you can erase and then again reprogram. And the third one is called RAM based technique. Okay. And the programmable logic style could be array based or lookup table based. Okay. And the interconnect style could be channel routing or mesh network based routing. Okay. Now let us try to understand what are these. Okay. So let us first talk about fuse based FPGA. Okay. So fuse based, as it has been already mentioned here, that you can only program it once. Okay. So in fuse based approach, you have a ONO dielectric in between these two layers. So let us say I want to contact these two layers or make a connection between these two layers. Okay. So in between these two layers, you have a ONO dielectric. Okay. Now, if you pass a high current via this ONO dielectric, then this dielectric will melt. Okay. And you will have a connection between these two, or a fuse between these two layers. So this is called fuse-based approach or fuse-based programming approach. This can only be done once. It cannot be redone, or it is not programmable. Okay. Then we have programmable approach, okay, which is based on which is also called array-based programmable approach. So array means here you have a AND array and a OR array. So what we call as PLA based approach, programmable logic array approach. So where you have a array of AND gates and an array of OR gates. Okay. So since it is fully programmable, so you can program, that is you can connect the OR gates also, AND gates also, and OR gates also, right? So here, for example, you can make a connection. So here also, for example, you can fuse a connection, right? Similarly, you have PROM based approach, that is connection can be done by again into the same array, that is AND array and OR array. So here OR array is only programmable, AND array is fixed. You cannot make connections or provide connections in the AND array, but yes, you can program the OR array, so which is called PROM based. Okay. Then you have PAL approach in FPGA, that is programmable AND logic or programmable AND array. So AND array, that is AND logic gates, are programmable here. You can make connections, okay? But OR array is fixed, right? So that is you cannot program OR gates here, but yes, you can program AND gates. So these are the three programmable logic styles in the FPGAs. So for example, using a PROM based approach where only the OR gates are programmable, AND gates are fixed. So AND gates are already fixed here. So one can make connections. Okay. So for example, somebody wants to implement this function, F0 is equal to, stay here. Huh? So for example, somebody wants to implement a function, F0 is x0 x1 plus x2 bar. So F0 can be obtained from here. and the respective connections can be fused. Okay. Similarly, F1 can be obtained and the respective connections can be fused, okay, to obtain this functionality. Now, in a lookup table based approach, so for example, here this is a system shown here by using the lookup table. Okay. So one can implement. So for example, here XOR gate is the truth table of XOR gate has been shown over here. Okay. So using the lookup table based approach, one can store these outputs in this memory here, right? Not just this output, but any output. Okay. So this is since for two input, system. So these inputs will act as the selection line for this multiplexers. So based on these two inputs, one can select these outputs. Okay, so which are already stored here in this memory. Now this memory can be reprogrammed. That is, you can implement not just XOR gate, but any other two input logic can be implemented by just storing the output in this memory and then selecting these outputs via the input selection lines. Okay. So this is called lookup table based approach. And in fact, you will find that in Xilinx XC4000 series FPGA, lookup table based approach is used to, so lookup table based approach can be found in Xilinx XC4000 series. Now, the wiring can also be programmed. Okay. That is the connections. So for example, here we have the wiring over here. So we have horizontal wire tracks present and also vertical wire tracks present. Okay. Now one can fuse them, that is make connect. Depending on the need, one can fuse them or make connect. So that is you want with. So for making a connection, you have to apply a VDD over here at the gate of this transistor, right? So that way, these junctions can be fused, okay, depending upon your requirement. That is, wire can also be programmed. Then, apart from this, wiring-based technique, one can also note mesh-based technique. Mesh. Now these junctions, so again these can be programmed or fused in a similar fashion. That is, each junction is associated with a transistor. So apply a high VDD at the gate of the transistor, okay, at the junction, and then the connections can be established. Okay. So this is again the transistor implementation of the same mesh. This mesh has been shown over here. So these transistors, the gate can be applied VDD to provide connection between. So for example, these two transistors gate can be applied high VDD to make a connection between the wires. Then you will find that the Altera Max board. Okay. So the interconnect architecture of this Altera Max board, it is array-based architecture. Interconnect architecture is array-based in Max 3000 to 7000 series. Similarly, it is a mesh-based interconnect architecture in Max 9000 series of Altera. So I think I am done with this portion of the course, that is design methodology. And I think we have covered almost all portions of our course. So if you have any queries, then maybe you can ask now.